I'm being followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And if I ever lose my hands, all my plowing, all my land, and if I ever lose my hands away, I won't have to work no more. And if I ever lose my eyes, all my colors all run dry. And if I ever lose my eyes away, I won't have to cry no more. 'Cause I'm being followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And if I ever lose my mouth, all my teeth move north and south. And if I ever lose my mouth away, I won't have to talk no more. And if I ever lose my legs, I won't moan, no, I won't beg. And if I ever lose my legs away, I won't have to walk no more. To find me, I asked the faithful light. Did it take long to find me? And now you're gonna stay the night. I'm being followed by a shadow, moon shadow, leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow.
This coming Friday, January 27th, is Holocaust Memorial Day. Observed around the world on the date of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp, Holocaust Memorial Day honors the losses of not only 6 million Jewish people, but also 9 million Russians, 2 million Poles, more than 300,000 Serbians, 250,000 or more of disabled people, and an untold number of political prisoners, including at least 70,000 LGBTQ people. In recognition of this day, I offer you the following prayer, written by Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby, and Senior Imam Kari Asim, who wrote it in 2020. They were sponsored by the Holocaust Memorial Trust in the United Kingdom, and this prayer is intended to be used by people of any faith. Loving God, we come to you with heavy hearts, remembering the 6 million Jewish souls murdered during the Holocaust. In the horrors of that history, when so many groups were targeted because of their identity, and in the genocides which followed, we recognize destructive prejudices that drive people apart. Forgive us when we give space to fear, negativity, and hatred of others, simply because they are different from us. In the light of God, we see everyone as equally precious manifestations of the divine and can know the courage to face the darkness. Through our prayers and actions, help us to stand together with those who are suffering so that light may banish all darkness, love will prevail over hate, and good will triumph over evil. Amen. Good morning and welcome to everybody. My name is Jennifer Bacmeister and I will be your worship leader this morning. If you are new to this faith, you will find that Unitarian Universalists travel many different paths to discover purpose and meaning in our lives. Some of us travel more than one path at a time or different paths consecutively. But we unite in our belief in the worth and dignity of everyone. We believe it's our obligation to express our faith through acts of compassion and justice. We are a people who actively invite intellectual and spiritual growth. Our kids ask questions and are encouraged to think for themselves. We practice a life-affirming faith and embrace people who are hurting or bereaved. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome any first-time or returning guests who are here today. I am so very glad that you came, and I hope that you will feel welcome and want to get to know us as well. Be sure to stop by our welcome table at the entryway, pick up some information about our church and our denomination. The folks at the table can answer any questions, or they can introduce you to somebody who knows the answer to the question that they do not. You're invited to sign in as a guest and get a name tag so that we can call you by your name. We offer Learn About Us classes throughout the year, and if you're interested in membership, our membership chair, Julie Smithers, who's here, I saw her. Is she standing by the door? Julie? She's back there in the corner. She'll be happy to talk to you about the path to membership. And if you have any questions about the church or membership, you can also go ask anyone with a new Ask Me sticker on their name tag. And I didn't put my name tag on today for demonstration purposes. They'll have name tags with a sticker. Even if you're not new here and you're a longtime congregant, I'll bet you those guys know something you don't. If you're ready to jump in and help out, we are always looking for volunteers. There are sign-up sheets on the back table behind y'all. This morning, we would also like to invite our guests and the entire congregation to join us after the service for refreshments, fair trade coffee, and conversation. There's also tea for the minority of you who don't drink coffee. We are so pleased this morning to have BBUUC member Mike Bernos performing special music today. He is a man of many hats, including businessman, writer, and obviously musician. He's also husband to Annabelle and dad to Joaquin. Our service today is also special in a different way. From time to time, UU ministers will share their sermons, and then when the message is this good, we can't help but offer it to our own congregation with the minister's approval, of course. David Dean will present the sermon today as it was written by Reverend Sarah York. We do have one small change in the order of service for those of you who like to follow along. David will do the reading immediately before the presentation of the sermon instead of before the offering. If you don't feel the need to follow line by line, you probably won't notice anything at all. Our opening hymn this morning is number 124, Be That Guide. I have this marked in my hymnals. We've sung this at least one previous time, but feedback this morning tells me it may have been a long time ago. So we're going to ask Gary to play it one time through for us so we can get the melody in our ears, and then we'll sing all 4 verses. If you would please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, number 124, Be That Guide. Well, if that hymn was unfamiliar to you, I couldn't tell. Each week, we recite our congregational covenant to remind us of our commitments to our fellow seekers. The words are printed in your order of service, if you would locate those, please, and then recite them with me this morning. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our call to worship. The words are printed in your order of service. Our chalice each Sunday morning as a symbol of our faith, and I will ask Eric Moore to please come forward and light our chalice this morning. The reading is called New Light and was written by Charles Howe. We light this chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through to enlighten our ways, that new truth is ever waiting to break through to illuminate our minds, and that new love is ever waiting to break through to warm our hearts. May we be open to this light and to the rich possibilities that it brings. Thank you, Eric. Our time for all ages today will be presented by Kris Kynes. Unfortunately, Jen Jones, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, is out sick. Please send good vibes her way. Religious education is a big part of who we are. We want our children to grow to be smart, wondering, and wonderful people. But that education does not stop just because we are not children. So to this end, we will share this story with all of us, the children and the children at heart. Kris?
Thank you, Jennifer. Voting for the First Time by Jakaran Olayoya. That's an interesting name, Olayoya. It was written for our first week of 30 Days of Love campaign, highlighting interdependence, democracy, and electoral justice. Lila waited patiently as she could as she stood in line with her mother. It was hot, and standing still felt so hard to do. Before they got out of the car, her mom turned to her and said, "Lila, I need you to be on your best behavior. This is important, and we will stay in line for as long as it takes. Are you ready?" "Yes, Mama Pam," shouted Lila as she unbuckled her seatbelt. Standing in line was hard. Lila tried standing on one leg, and then the other. She tried sitting on the grass, but she accidentally put her hand in an ant bed, and she was afraid of bugs. Lila wanted to complain, but when she looked at her mom, she saw her serious face and remembered when she told her that this was important. Instead, she decided to ask a question. "Mom, why are we here?" Lila's mom looked down and said, "We are here to vote in the election. It is the process where all adults share their opinions on who is the best person to represent them and make laws that benefit them. All adults get a say in making laws. Almost all adults. There are rules and restrictions, but for the most part, yes. Do they all stand in line like us? A good portion of people do. Some people can vote early in person or by mail. There are many different options to follow. How do you know who you're going to vote for? Well, these candidates are known ahead of time. You know how Mama Kate mutes the TV during commercials? It's usually when a candidate is promoting themselves to get people to vote for them. You can also request a sample ballot and read up on whatever you're going to vote on and make your decisions ahead of time. She pulled out a folded piece of paper and showed it to Lila. See? I've marked each one of my votes here, and when it is time for me to go to the voting booth, I will have a reminder of the research I did. You can't have the answers, Mom. You have to remember, like when I have to take a test at school. Mama Pan laughed and said, "It's a little different from school tests. No one is grading my work, and I am free to bring notes." What happens if people stop voting? If people stop voting, then the system doesn't work. We all have to do our part, she replied. Could I be a representative one day? Absolutely. You can do anything you set your mind to do. Lila thought a moment before asking, so what happens when you vote for someone and they don't win? Well, sweetheart, that can happen. We don't always get what we want or need. Do you remember when you were 5 years old and you wanted a baby goat? Our apartment is not nearly big enough for a baby goat, so your mom and I said no. Do you remember what happened? Lila paused. I cried. But then I asked for a stuffed goat, and we found one at a toy store, George the goat. He's still my favorite. Yes. Well, your choice of candidate losing is kind of like that. Sometimes you are so disappointed you cry. Sometimes you find a compromise and it works out. Or you work harder to make sure more people learn about your candidate next time. No matter what, we are always our best selves, win or lose. By the time Lila had asked her last question, they were inside the building waiting for a booth to open. A nice lady wearing a poll worker badge came up to Mama Pam while they were waiting. We have a special polling section for children to learn more about voting. Would you like your daughter to participate? Mama Pam looked down at Lila, who was begging with her eyes to go. Mama Pam laughed. Sure, be on your best behavior, Lila. Lila grabbed the poll worker's outstretched hand and allowed her to lead her to the center of the polling center where a small voting booth were set up that were exactly the right size for Lila. The poll workers explained each step to Lila as she voted on her favorite type of breakfast cereal, best place to go on vacation, and favorite animal. Goats, of course. When Lila was done, she said, "Wow, that was really hard work." The poll worker agreed with a knowing smile and allowed Lila to pick an "I voted" sticker. When she turned around, Mama Pam was waiting for her. She smiled brightly when she saw her mom was wearing the same sticker. She paused a moment, her excitement slowing down. Mom, why isn't Mama Kate voting with us? Well, Lila, remember when I said there were some rules that prevented adults from voting? Well, Mama Kate is not a citizen of this country, and she's not allowed to vote until she is. We hope she will be a full citizen by next year, and she'll be able to vote with us then. Lila's excitement returned. Yay! I can't wait to teach Mama Kate everything I learned about voting today. And with that, my story is told. Now I'd like to invite Joaquin to come forward to take the children's chalice as we pass the flame of religious freedom from one generation to the next. He will lead the children on their way to religious education classes as the congregation remains seated and sings hymn number 413, Go Now in Peace.
Week in our church, we take up an offering. It is good to remind ourselves from time to time that the offering is symbolic as well as practical. We know that through pledges, we build our budget and fund our programs and ministries, pay our staff, and finance the comfort and beauty of our buildings. And we know that we could easily submit those pledge checks to the church at any time that's convenient for us. But we pass the plate during worship service to make a community expression of thanks for the blessings of abundance, to visibly bring in the harvest at this most cherished hour of our week. Our offering says that the act of giving is as essential to our spiritual well-being as anything else we do here on Sunday mornings. Even if during this ritual your offering is only symbolic, we ask that you please take the plate and pass it to your neighbor. At the completion of the offering, I'll invite you to rise, embody your spirit, and join us in singing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. At this time, I'll invite our offertory ushers, Chuck Smithers and Cindy Jorgensen, to come forward and collect the offering for us.
Our sermon this morning was originally written and presented by Reverend Sarah York. She was a long-time Unitarian Universalist minister, serving many congregations during her career. Before her retirement, she served the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Vero Beach, Florida. She began this sermon in 2018 with a parable written by Rabbi Edwin Friedman. It's called The Bridge. There was a man who had given much thought to what he wanted from life. He had experienced many moods and trials. He had experimented with different ways of living, and he had had his share of both success and failure. At last, he began to see clearly where he wanted to go. Diligently, he searched for the right opportunity. Sometimes he came close, only to be pushed away. Often he applied all his strength and imagination only to find his path hopelessly blocked. And then at last it came. But the opportunity would not wait. It would be made available only for a short time. If it were seen that he was not committed, the opportunity would not come again. Eager to arrive, he started on his journey. With each step, he wanted to move faster. With each thought about his goal, his heart beat quicker. With each vision of what lay ahead, he found renewed vigor. Strength that had left him since his early youth returned, and desires, all kinds of desires, reawakened from their long dormant positions. Hurrying along, he came upon a bridge that crossed through the middle of a town. It had been built high above a river in order to protect it from the floods of spring. He started across. And then he noticed someone coming from the opposite direction. As they moved closer, it seemed as though the other was coming to greet him. He could see clearly, however, that he did not know this other, who was dressed similarly, except for something tied around his waist. When they were within hailing distance, he could see what the other had about his waist was a rope. It was wrapped around him many times, and probably, if extended, would reach a length of 30 feet. The other began to uncurl the rope, and just as they were coming closer, the stranger said, "Pardon me, would you be so kind as to hold the end for a moment?" Surprised by this politely phrased but curious request, he agreed without a thought, reached out, and took it. "Thank you," said the other, and then added, "Now 2 hands now, remember, hold tight," and he jumped off the bridge. Quickly, the free-falling body hurtled the distance of the rope's length, and from the bridge, the man abruptly felt the pull. Instinctively, he held tight and was almost dragged over the side. He managed to brace himself against the edge, however, and after having caught his breath, looked down at the other, dangling close to oblivion. "What are you trying to do?" he yelled. "Just hold tight," said the other. Well, this is ridiculous, the man thought, and began trying to haul the other one in. He couldn't get the leverage, though. It was as though the weight of the other person and the length of the rope had been carefully calculated in advance so that together they created a counterweight, just beyond his strength, to bring the other back to safety. "Why did you do this?" the man called out. "Remember," said the other, "if you let go, I will be lost." "But I can't pull you up." "I am your responsibility." "Well, I didn't ask for it." "If you let go, I will be lost." He began to look around for help, but there was no one. How long would he have to wait? Why did this happen to befall him now, just as he was on the verge of true success? He examined the sides, searching for a place to tie the rope, some protrusion perhaps, or maybe a hole in the boards, but the railing was unusually uniform in shape. There were no spaces between the boards. There was no way to get rid of this newfound burden, even temporarily. "What do you want?" he asked the other hanging below. "Just your help," the other answered. "How can I help? I cannot pull you in. There is no place to tie the rope, so I can go and find someone to help me help you." "I know that. Just hang on. That'll be enough. Tie the rope around your waist. That'll be easier." Fearing that his arms could not hold out for much longer, he tied the rope around his waist. "Why did you do this?" he asked again. "Don't you see what you've done? What possible purpose could you have had in mind?" "Just remember, my life is in your hands." What should he do? If I let go, all my life I will know that I let this other die. If I stay, I risk losing my momentum toward my own long sought after salvation. Either way, this will haunt me forever. With ironic humor, he thought to die himself, instantly, jump off the bridge while still holding on. That'll teach him. But he wanted to live, and to live life fully. What a choice I have to make. How shall I ever decide? As time went by, still no one came. The critical moment of decision was drawing near. To show his commitment to his own goals, he would have to continue on his journey now. It was almost already too late to arrive in time. But what a terrible choice to have to make. A new thought occurred to him. While he could not pull the other up solely by his own efforts, if the other would shorten the rope from his end by curling it around his waist, again and again, together they could do it. Actually, the other could do it by himself. All by himself, so long as he, standing on the bridge, could keep it still and steady. "Now listen," he shouted down, "I think I know how to save you." And he explained his plan. The other wasn't interested. "You mean you won't help? But I told you I can't pull you up by myself, and I don't think I can hang on much longer either." "You must try," the other shouted back in tears. "If you fail, I die." The point of decision arrived. What should he do? My life or the others? And then a new idea, a revelation. So new, in fact, it seemed heretical. So alien was it to his traditional way of thinking. "I want you to listen carefully," he said, "because I mean what I am about to say. I will not accept the position of choice for your life, only for my own. The position of choice for your own life, I hereby give back to you." "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's simply up to you. You decide which way this ends. I will become the counterweight. You do the pulling, bring yourself up. I'll even tug a little from here." And he began unwinding the rope from around his waist and braced himself anew against the side. "You cannot mean what you say," the other shrieked. "You would not be so selfish. I am your responsibility. What could be so important that you would let someone die? Do not do this to me." He waited a moment. There was no change in the tension of the rope. "I accept your choice," he said at last, and freed his hands. Reverend York begins. There is a story, another story, that is told about 3 brick masons working on the same project. When the first man was asked what he was doing, he answered gruffly, without even raising his eyes from his work, "I'm laying bricks." Second man replied, "I'm building a wall." Third man said enthusiastically, with obvious pride, "I'm building a cathedral." Just about everything I want to say today is contained in that story. So if you tune out, you don't listen to anything else I say, take that story with you and apply it to your life. When you do something, think about it. Are you laying bricks? Are you building a wall? Or are you building a cathedral? The difference will not be in what you are doing, but in how you feel about yourself when you are doing it. 3 brick masons engaged in the same task. One of them was following his bliss. Bliss is not a word I tend to use in my everyday vocabulary. I think of it as a word that gets used in corny romantic songs. Why? Because it rhymes with kiss. But now here you have a sermon called Follow Your Bliss. It's right there in the order of service. Because that wise and wonderful anthropologist Joseph Campbell used the phrase over and over again to describe spiritual balance. If you follow your bliss, said Campbell, you put yourself on a kind of a track that has been there all the while, waiting for you, and the life that you ought to be living is the one you are living. Wherever you are, if you are following your bliss, you are enjoying that refreshment, that life within you all the time. Joseph Campbell talked about living out of the hub of the wheel instead of the rim. Anne Morrow Lindbergh similarly wrote, I want a central core to my life that will enable me to carry out my obligations and activities as well as I can. I want, in fact, to borrow from the language of the saints, to live in grace as much of the time as possible. I'm not using this term in strictly theological sense. By grace, I mean an inner harmony, essentially spiritual, which can be translated into outward harmony. I am seeking perhaps what Socrates asked for when he said, may the outward and inward person be as one. I would like to achieve a state of spiritual grace from which I could function and give as I was meant to. Anne Morrow Lindbergh. Call it the spiritual core. Call it creative energy. Call it the hub. Call it the inner light. Call it humanity. May the outward and inward person be at one. To follow your bliss is to live in grace from the hub, from the place that builds a cathedral. Campbell was not encouraging self-indulgence, though. He was talking about listening for what calls you to know who you are and who you are meant to become. To follow your bliss, then, is to be centered. He said, there is something inside you that knows when you're in the center, that knows when you're on the beam or off the beam. Most of us are living on the rim most of our lives. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn puts it through the voice of a prisoner, people waste themselves in senseless thrashing around for the sake of a handful of goods and die without realizing their spiritual wealth. Spiritual wealth, what does that mean to you? For many people, I think the new year is a time when they pause to think about spiritual wealth and spiritual health. Some of you may be here for the first time, maybe from a long absence from a religious community, because you want to attend better to your spirit. You want to feel that sense of well-being and purpose that comes with being centered in something larger than yourself. Perhaps you are conscious of the fragility of life, and you want to be connected with a more eternal purpose. Perhaps you're feeling isolated, and you need to experience yourself in the context of a community where people care about one another and work together for love, justice, and peace in the world. As Rabbi Friedman illustrates in his story about the man being waylaid while crossing the bridge, things happen in our lives that pull us off course. Instead of feeling our spiritual wealth, we feel trapped or stuck, out of control. I recall a statement a friend of mine made several years ago. He said, "Sometimes I feel that my life is living me instead of me living my life." He was a very successful businessman with a wonderful family. He was a generous community volunteer. He loved to garden and play golf, and he was in good health. To anyone who might observe his life from the outside, he seemed to have it all together. But his success had become his boss, and it was not his bliss. He had a big home with a big mortgage, kids in expensive schools. He felt trapped in a lifestyle choice that required a large income. He felt he did not have any choices left to make. He was living a good life, but he was living on the rim. Following your bliss means feeling in balance. It means being in alignment with your highest ideals and your deepest yearnings. If you are theistic, you might even speak of feeling that there's a divine purpose in the center of your life. Different things pull us off balance. The man walking across the bridge, have you ever felt like you have been handed that rope? Maybe you lost your job. You got stuck doing something you did not enjoy. Maybe you got pregnant when you were not ready for parenthood. Maybe you got into a relationship where you were living to please others and draining yourself. Maybe you chose to help someone and they took advantage of your kindness or betrayed you. Maybe you became dependent on someone else's financial support. Maybe you or someone you love became addicted to alcohol or gambling or something else addictive. Or maybe you were just trying to be a good person and do the right thing, but you were using yourself up, trying to be the person you thought you should be instead of the person you are. I could go on for several minutes listing all the things each of us may have dangling at the end of that rope, including things like our own guilt, our own fear. I'll let you think about that for yourselves as you consider what might be distracting you or pulling you off the beam. I want to explore now what might help you come back to the center, to the place where you feel most alive, where you feel engaged with others, where you feel fully present in this moment and you know you are part of a larger energy and purpose. My ministry, now that I am retired, says Reverend York, is as a spiritual director. That's a misnomer. I don't direct anybody. I spend most of my sessions with people helping them discern their calling in life and center themselves spiritually, usually with a regular spiritual practice that fits their particular personality type. Someone asked me recently what I do for spiritual practice. I told her I've tried many things: prayer, memorizing scripture or poetry, sitting meditation, walking meditation, drumming, chanting, body movement. Each has served at different stages in my life to call me back over and over again from the rim to the center. Now it's morning quiet time, walking, engaging with the natural world. When we had children in the house, it was always harder to make time for meditation. But I think that was when I had the most discipline about my practice, because it was when I needed it the most. Parenting teenagers especially seemed to pull me off the beam. In more recent years, I've been drawn to the Buddhist approach described by Thich Nhat Hanh as mindfulness. He writes, "Mindfulness is simply to be there, alive, in the present moment, body and mind united. It is the capacity of being there in order to live deeply every moment of your life. According to the teaching of the Buddha, Life is available only in the present moment. If you are distracted, if your mind is not there with your body, then you miss your appointment with life. Your appointment with life, like the man walking across the bridge. You have an appointment with life. Your appointment with life. Now, in this moment, in this place, with these people, now, on the cusp of a new year. To follow your bliss is to be present for your appointment with life. Sometimes a regular spiritual practice helps you stay in tune with your own purpose. You miss your appointment when you're anxious or afraid. You miss it when you're worried. You miss it when you're critical or judgmental. You miss it when you are stuck in negative feelings or grumpiness. So your practice may also be something that brings you back over and over again to a calm, mindful presence. And a little book called Let Your Life Speak, we have referred to this book here before. Parker Palmer writes, there are moments when it is clear, if I have eyes to see, that the life I am living is not the same as the life that wants to live in me. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, Parker writes, listen to what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you have decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody, what values you represent, unquote. Parker speaks of a voice that calls you inside to be the person you were born to be. So I ask, what are you called to be with your one wild and precious life? It's not a question about your career or your profession or your volunteer activities. It's not about what you wish you could do if you were younger or smarter or more physically able. It's a question about the life that wants to live in you right now. 3 parents, all doing the same thing, were asked what they were doing. First one answered, I'm changing the baby's diapers. Second one said, I'm raising my child. Third one said, I'm building the future of our world. 3 church members involved in a volunteer activity were asked what they were doing. The first one answered, I'm working on a quilt for the auction. Second one said, I'm helping us make the budget for this year so we can keep our doors open on Sunday. And the third one answered, I am serving the ideals of my religious faith. I remember a man in my congregation in Rockville, Maryland, named Tillman. Tillman was a young man who worked very hard at his job and was proud to be able to support his family well. He literally worked his heart out. I guess it gave up on him. He had a heart transplant. He lived for another 5 years. He was no longer able to maintain a career. However, he who had been the one to go off and bring home the bacon now became the one to stay home and cook the bacon. It was not an easy adjustment for him to switch from breadwinner to bread maker, but it was an adjustment that gave him the opportunity to reflect on how much he had needed his work to express his sense of self-worth. In those 5 years, he learned what it meant to express his identity in what he did rather than receive his identity from what he did. With a profound sense of the preciousness of each day, he lived with gratitude from what he was given. He told me before he died that those 5 years were a gift from God. They gave him relationship with his children. Tillman's loss of a heart enabled him to learn about the heart that mattered. He got better acquainted, not just with his children, but also with the light within himself. It was beautiful to see. Unfortunately, it often takes a major life event or tragedy to shake many of us out of the place where we see and nurture our own inner life, where we express our identity in what we do rather than receive it from what we do. To thine own self be true, wrote Shakespeare, although the words came from a scoundrel, Polonius. To thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, that thou canst not then be false to any man or woman or child or beast or bird or tree or flower or mountain or meadow or sea or star. So, that's my sermon for today. To thine own self be true. Follow your bliss. Simple, huh? But it will occupy you for at least one lifetime.
Our closing hymn today, excuse me, is number 329, Life Has Loveliness to Sell. Once again, Gary will play this one time through, and it's short and the words are good, so we'll sing all 3 verses. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn and remain standing for the benediction and the extinguishing of the chalice. Einstein said, "There are only 2 ways to live your life. One, as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle." Amen. Blessed be. Go now in peace.